together. It's very kind of you to do this. And as I look around the room and look at all the people here tonight, I just want to say thank you. I know there are other places you could have been tonight. This isn't the only option you had. You could be putting your time somewhere else. And thank you. Thank you for doing this. Many of us are a little discouraged. It's easy to get discouraged, after the national election. There is some good reason for encouragement. You know that those nationwide, the same folks that re-elected President Obama, also re-elected a Republican Congress. And most of those Republican congressmen are in favor of the Bryan budget. Many of the things that conservative, Tea Party, constitutional folks are for. Obviously, that electorate didn't feel like we gave them the choice they needed. Things happened in the campaign, but there's still reason for encouragement. We're so thankful that we have the Constitution, in the Southern Pocket, that we have the Constitution. We still have those liberties that we believe come from God. Our founders believe the same thing. We still have this wonderful system. And in Texas, you probably know this, but in Texas, if you look at the numbers, in spite of the problems we had nationally, in Texas, Governor Romney actually got more votes than Senator McCain got 4 years ago. Even the media is talking about how Texas actually is showing to be more conservative. And people are responding to a conservative message. There's been a lot of talk about demographic changes. What does that mean for us? It's interesting. In Texas, the polls just from this election tell us that in the Hispanic community, folks identify themselves. 46% of them say they're conservative. In the mid-30s say that they're moderate. Only like 18% say they're liberal. That's obviously a natural constituency for conservatives, pro-family, hard-working people. So we have much to be encouraged by in Texas. And obviously, as you said in your prayer, we're glad God's still in control of these things. We look to Him, we trust Him, we want to do our part. We want to do our part here. So, my name is Bryan Hughes, and I live just not too far down Highway 80 from here. I live in Mineola, and I've been in the House since 2003. Elected back in 2002. And over that time, we've amassed a pretty conservative voting record. And of course, when you're there that long, you cast a lot of votes. It's all on the internet, so you can see it. If you have nothing better to do, you can take a look at that. But we have a pretty conservative voting record. I practice law. That's my day job in Mineola in East Texas. And I'm running for Speaker of the House. And I'm running because there's a lot of frustration among members of the House and also among people back home because we're sending conservatives to Austin. We're electing conservative members of the legislature. And bills are getting filed for those conservative priorities that the people have. But the bills, by and large, are not making it through the process. Something's wrong. And we have some ideas about what can be done to change that. And so that's why I'm running. I'm responding to what I've heard from members of the House and from people back home. Now, the Speaker is elected by the members of the House. Of course, you all know this. On January the 8th, the first day of the session, when the members gather, one of the first things we do is elect the Speaker. So the people of Texas do not vote directly for the Speaker. Right? Each member of the legislature, again, those 150 of us, will cast that vote. And I believe between now and January, members of the legislature will continue to talk to their constituents, get their input, and then find out what's important to them in this process. So that's why we're here. We're glad this is an open process. You may know that until a few years ago, it was actually against the law for so-called outside groups, for interest groups, for Tea Party groups to get involved in the Speaker's race. But that law was struck down a few years ago because it was a violation of our right to free speech and our right to participate in it. So now people can be involved. And that's a good thing. Nothing wrong with having a dialogue with the folks who sent us here. So I'm a conservative state rep from over in East Texas and running for Speaker of the House to change the direction, shake things up a little bit, give power back to the people. That's why we're running. And I'll pause with that and see if anybody has any questions. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. God bless you.
Question, if you can speak loudly and we'll repeat it so that everybody can hear then, but we'll start out okay in the back.
Hey Bryan, I know that the Speaker is going to call on his colleagues who had favorable legislation that he says that he helped work pass for them. How do you get those particular legislators to say, well, we owe the Speaker one versus we want to work with you?
All right. So the question is, for those members who were able to pass bills, had a successful session, and we're thankful for that. What do we do about them? I'll tell you this. I'm talking to a lot of members of the legislature. I've been doing it over the last few months. I'm doing it a lot more now that the election's over. And I'm encouraged. Even those members who have said, publicly, yeah, I'm leaning towards Speaker Straus. You might see me on his list, but I'm keeping my options open. I'd like to see a change. Let's keep talking. Let's sit down. And so I keep having those conversations. Most of my time spent these days is on the phone with members and members-elect, meeting with them in groups, individually, and talking to them. I'm encouraged. I think we all know that people are paying attention to the process now, maybe more than we have in the past. I don't have to tell you folks that. You're obviously here. This is somewhat of a little-known process we're talking about. So honestly, I'm encouraged. I think members know people are paying attention, and they want to get it right. So there's support for Speaker Straus. I don't think he has real strong support. And let me just say, I don't want to forget to mention this. Speaker Straus is a nice guy. He's a gentleman. You'll never hear me attack him personally or question his character or anything like that. We do have different ideas about that way the House could be run. We have very different voting records and different philosophies, which I think are demonstrated by our voting records and by the positions we've taken. But I really am optimistic. I think most members are keeping an open mind. And you may also know the Republican Party platform calls for Republican members to hold town hall meetings to meet with their constituents to talk about the leadership of the House. That's a new thing that was just put in the platform. And several members have told us they intend to do that. And that's a good thing too. So we're encouraged. I really think members are going to keep an open mind and listen to their constituents.
Okay. We'll start here. I've got the hands, so I'll go in order of the hands.
Have you spoken to Representative Paxton to find out what he learned 2 years ago that you could do differently so that we can have new leadership?
All right. The question is, have I spoken to Representative Paxton about what he did last time, maybe lessons learned, how we can do it this time? And as you may recall, Representative Ken Paxton from McKinney, just up the road, ran for Speaker 2 years ago, and made a strong campaign and made a lot of progress. Did not ultimately win the campaign, but I'll say this about Ken Paxton's race for Speaker. I think everyone agrees that it moved the agenda because he ran for Speaker, and because he ran on these conservative issues that the people of Texas have said they wanted, and that they've elected people to put in. Because he ran on those issues, we had a debate about them, and I think it moved the agenda to the right for the session. So he did accomplish something in the race. But your question is, are we learning from what happened last time? A couple of things are different from last time. One is pledge cards. Y'all remember pledge cards? Oh, yeah. Pardon me. Last session, when Representative Paxton began his race, he was facing a real uphill climb because over 100 members of the House, like a year and a half earlier, had already signed pledge cards saying, we're for Speaker Straus. It was done at the end of the session, and it used to be the practice, and so many members felt bound by that. So they said, I've already given you my word, I made this public pledge, and I can't really go back on that. And so now some felt like they could because circumstances changed, but that was a real hill to climb that turned out to be a real problem. So that's not an issue this time. Again, Speaker Straus is making calls and talking to members we hear, and I'm calling, talking to members. A lot of members are calling one another. Some are calling on my behalf, some are calling on his behalf. But these discussions are going on, and a few members have come out and said who they're for. But again, we've had a number tell us privately that I haven't made a firm decision yet. So we think that's one big difference: the fact that there's no pledge cards that we're up against.
Can I follow up? What about the new members that have been elected to the term that are freshmen? How have they reacted so far?
So the next question is, what about these new members, folks that are just now coming into the legislature, that were elected in November or back in the spring in the primary, just coming in? We're very encouraged. We had a very positive response. This new class of freshmen is a conservative, wanting to shake things up, free market folks. The class before them was that way as well. In fact, you guys know this, in this area, you were very blessed to have Cindy Burkett and Kenneth Sheets. They're conservative, they're solid members. Y'all know them well. I know them well also. We work together, they have great voting records, and they didn't run just to become part of the system. They're down there for the right reasons. And so this new class of members that are coming in, the ones you're talking about, a lot of people like that. We've received a lot of encouragement from these guys. In fact, for a number of these new members, for a number of these new Republican members, the speaker race was actually an issue in their campaign, and they've already taken positions on that. So we're very encouraged. It's the new members that really are helping to drive this. And if you think about it, almost half the members of the House when we come in January, will be in their first or second term. That's very unusual. That's good. New blood is a good thing. So we're encouraged by that. Does that answer your question?
Okay, I've got 3 hands first, and then I'll get to more of you here. But Bob Bishop, and then Bob Hall, Ed Devine.
Brian, two-parter if you wouldn't mind.
Okay, I'll try.
Governor Perry has indicated that he doesn't want the state of Texas to set up insurance exchange
That's right.
to opt out sort of from Obamacare.
That's right.
He's going to allow the federal government to do that.
That's right.
Secondly, he's also already have said that he doesn't want to expand Medicaid in this state because it would probably bankrupt us.
That's right.
All right. I would like to know your feeling on that. That's the first one.
Okay.
The second is, I heard today that about 108,000 signatures were presented to secede from the Union in Texas. I would like to know how you would feel about that if you were there as speaker.
Okay, thanks for that. So the first question has to do with healthcare, so-called healthcare reform, Obamacare, the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, PPACA, whatever you want to call it. A couple of things. That act calls for Texas to expand Medicaid, to dramatically expand Medicaid, and also to set up health insurance exchanges. Those are the two things the states are compelled to do, or they try to compel us to do that. Governor Perry came out and said, we don't want to expand Medicaid, and we don't want to set up health insurance exchanges. I agree with him. I issued a statement about around the same time he did, and as you mentioned just today, Governor Perry came out again and said, I really meant it. We don't need to set up those health insurance exchanges. And there's a couple of really neat reasons why we shouldn't. As you know, under the Health Care Act, the states are encouraged to set up these health insurance exchanges. Now, what they're claimed to be, what they say these are, would be an online marketplace where you can shop for health insurance, look at the coverage you want, try to find the best price. That sounds great. Unfortunately, we've learned that these are all controlled by the federal government. They decide what coverage is available, who's on there, what the parameters are. It's anything but a free market exchange. A couple of states have tried to do it. Utah tried to do it, and they found out that even though they set up their own exchange, it was completely controlled by the federal government. So the feds have said to us, you can set up this exchange, but if you don't, we're going to do it for you. And when they did that, they assumed all the states would just fall into line. Like this happened over the last, number of decades. Interesting. In the bill, it says if the states set up the health insurance exchange, the feds will pay for it. But if the states don't do it, the feds will set one up. But from what we've read, there's a question about how they're going to pay for it if they have to set it up themselves. So we're very encouraged by that, all right? So if Texas says no, and a number of the big states say no, it could be a real impediment to forcing this on the states. And you guys know that's what federalism is about, right? It's interplay between the state and the federal government. We're not their agents. We're not their subcontractors. I think Governor Perry said that today. So I think it's great that we're not setting up the exchanges. We're gonna make them negotiate with us. We can't just fall into line. And one more thing I want to throw in about those health insurance exchanges. Now, the act, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, as you know, is pretty long, and it was put together pretty quickly. And so a lot of it's kind of vague. And right now, the agency is setting up all the rules to implement Obamacare. But the way some people have read the act, we don't know what the answer is, but the way some people have read Obamacare, the employer sanction, right? The employer sanction, really the heart of the bill, is tied to the state health insurance exchanges. So some people think if the states don't set up health insurance exchanges, it may take the employer sanction out. We don't know yet. That's going to be litigated in court. So a lot of good reasons not to set up healthcare exchanges. And as far as expanding Medicaid, sorry for the lengthy answer, but this is pretty important. Medicaid started out as a noble program to help children, but like every other federal program, it began that way and it grew. It started out with the feds paying for most of it, but that's changed also. And so here we are today with a system we can't afford that doesn't deliver people good care. Folks don't want to be in Medicaid unless they have to. Fewer and fewer doctors and providers are participating in Medicaid. Medicaid we're talking about. It's not a good system. And so putting millions more people into Medicaid is a bad idea. And so, again, if Texas and enough big states say no, we can bring the feds to the table and get some real health care reform. So I think that's important. I think the governor's right about that. And I've said that publicly. I said it this morning in an interview when it came up. So I think you're exactly right. Your second question was about secession, all right? I'm going to borrow a phrase from my friend Brandon Creighton, who's a great conservative state rep down in the Houston area, actually north of Houston. Conroe. He says rather than seceding from the Union, we need to focus on succeeding in the Union. And I think that's a pretty good play on words. You know, Texas, America needs us. America needs Texas. Wouldn't you say now more than ever? Texas needs to be strong. Now more than ever. We love our country. We're thankful for it. And of course, we can talk about these things. We have free speech, and we can debate these things and hash them out. I think Texas is an important part of America, and I want to stay and fight. I want to stay and fight in the Union. Does that answer your question? Thank you for that.
Okay, Bob Hall.
Brian. Bob Hall from
Hey, Bob.
Van Zandt County. How you doing? Brian, we all know that the budget is probably going to be one of the most significant issues to be addressed. And
Yes.
as you know, there are two ways to solve the budget problem. Hopefully we get an honestly balanced budget this time, not like what has happened in the past. You either raise taxes or cut spending.
Right.
Now, Obama has used a soundbite that says, we cannot cut our way to prosperity,
Right.
which is clear of his desire to raise taxes. Unfortunately, a Speaker of the House has used that same phrase numerous times, saying we cannot cut our way to prosperity, which to me indicates he is all for raising taxes in order to balance the budget. What's your position on how to get to a balanced budget?
That's a great question, Bob. Thanks for that. And I read the same thing. I read the same quote. I saw that too. We have to live within our means, just like everybody in this room has to, like families have to, businesses have to. When there's less money coming in, you have to look at what you can do without. You have to make the dollars go a little further. You have to stretch them, and you have to prioritize your spending. So that's what we're going to have to do. And Bob, you're exactly right. It's interesting. The economy in Texas is growing. Right? We're doing better than most states. And over the last several months, our sales tax receipts have been up double digits month after month. So we're going to have more money to work with than we did last session. Again, we need to take the dollars and make sure they're going to the right place. We have a lot of dedicated revenue in Texas where we set up a tax or a fund for a certain purpose. And then that money comes in and it goes to something else. So I think the first thing we have to do before we talk about new revenue is take the money we have and put it where we said we were going to put it, right? We did that. And if we start there, that goes a long way towards solving transportation problems, right? Take the money that's supposed to go for roads and make sure it's going for roads. Follow what the Constitution says. Make sure we're doing that. That's the start. Once we do that and put all the money in the right place, then we can see what our needs are. But I think we need to focus on taking the money we have and putting it in the right place. So raising taxes, especially in a recession, is a bad idea, bad policy. I'm not for that. And the good news is the majority of the members of the House and Senate also are not for that. So we're encouraged by that. Thank you for the question.
Okay, Ed, I think you had
Brian, my question is, what can we do, Texas citizens, to help you get this done?
Oh, thank you for that. And let's talk about it just briefly. Because some people have said, you know, Brian, we want you, are you running because you want to ram this agenda through? We're talking about fiscal responsibility. We're talking about pro-life stuff. We're talking about state sovereignty, standing up against the feds. These are one of the neat situations we have in Texas. It's not that we have to have a speaker to ram these things through, because we have members of the House, a majority of the members of the House, who are for these things. I mean, you're sending people to Austin who are for all these things, and so are people all over Texas. The problem is the way the rules are set up and the way the House is being run, these bills are not making it through the process for some reason. So all we really need is for the rules to be fair and a speaker who will apply them fairly, and he'll get to work and move the House through the process. If we do that, these bills are going to pass. So what can you do? That's a good question. You know, a lot of folks have said they're willing to endorse us, right? Even though folks back home don't have a vote in the speaker's race, they can still endorse us. They can say, I like what Bryan Hughes said, I'm for Bryan Hughes. If you could do that, that's a tremendous help to us. It shows that we have support. And again, over the next couple of months, between now and January the 8th, members are going to be having a dialogue with folks they represent. And this is all going to come out. We can have this discussion about how the House ought to be run and what issues ought to be coming before the House. So, now, to be honest with you, the main thing you can do to help, and I'm going to tell you the truth, if you can pray for us, that's a really big deal. This is a big campaign. We've got a lot of people to talk to, a lot of ground to cover. So pray for us. Pray that we'll have wisdom, that we can do a good job, that we can have a good discussion. Pray for us. Give us your endorsement. That's a tremendous help if you can do that.
How about a couple 100,000 will show up down in Austin on the day you're going to vote?
Thanks. Some folks are. I understand some folks are planning to have people come down there, and I'll tell you, the real work is between now and then, but yes, the day of the vote, January the 8th, that's when the vote takes place. There's been a lot of discussion about how the speaker is going to be selected. Is there going to be a Republican caucus meeting? What's going to happen? We don't really know, but we do know the Constitution says the House will choose a member, shall choose a speaker from among its members when we meet. So on that day, the speaker will be chosen. So that's important. Thank you for that.
Along with that, there's, as far as endorsing, there are, at the table at the back tonight when you leave, if you're willing to endorse Bryan, that he fits the type of leadership that you want to have in Austin, then be sure to sign up at the end here tonight on that endorsement. That will be important too. We're going to be having meetings with Kenneth Sheets and Cindy Burkett in our area, and so, you know, we're going to be taking these endorsements to them, and also we'll be meeting with them and letting you know on that. So that's one more aspect down the line that, or step down the line that we will be talking with them about. So along with that, now we've got Ken. Hang on here because I've got hands all over the place. I'll try to get to as many. All after Ken, then Ray, Angela, and your name?
Ronnie.
Ronnie. Okay. So that's kind of the order we're taking. Oh, hi, Rick. Yeah, and you.
Yeah, I bet y'all can go.
Rick's running the mic, so we will have his question.
Bryan, first of all, thanks for joining us this evening. It's a great pleasure. My question to you is, what have you seen and you said earlier that you have respect for Straus and you like him as a person just fine. But what have you seen under Straus, under his leadership, that has convinced you that we need to have a change in leadership?
Okay. So, good question, Ken. So why do we need to change? What have I seen that's caused us to want to do this? A couple of things. We talked about fiscal responsibility. Bills get filed in the legislative session with broad support. Bills to do things like limiting the growth of government to population growth plus inflation. Those bills are getting filed. They're not getting a hearing. They're getting a hearing so late in the process that they can't make it through. What about bills to do something about property tax, right? To do something about appraisal reform. These bills get filed every session, but they're not seeing the light of day, even though a number of members run on these issues and we say this is what we're for, and it is what we're for. Folks are genuinely for these things, but these bills are not moving forward. The pro-life bills, they're very important to many of us. We had one a big pro-life bill passed last session. We're thankful for that. It passed through the normal process. All the other pro-life accomplishments we made, and there were quite a few, they were all done on the floor using the amendment process, because we had 105 or 6 pro-lifers last session. So even though we weren't getting a lot of help from the leadership, on the floor of the House, we could get it done. So what I would say is, we're seeing all these conservative bills that are getting filed, and they're supported by a lot of members, but they're not moving through the process. So something's happened. These bills are dying back in the shadows of the committee process for various reasons. Now, let me say this. The committee process is important, right? If the bill is filed, it needs to go through committee to clean it up, make sure it's a good idea, improve it. If every bill that were filed came to the floor, that would not be good. We have to have a committee process. But it shouldn't be a mechanism to kill bills that have broad support, right? So that's one thing that we think is really important. And that's what I've been talking to members about, to members from all over Texas. We want to make sure that if a bill has broad support among members of the legislature, it should move. Because if it has support among the members of the House, it has support among the folks who sent them there, right? That's really what we've been talking about in this process. I think that's a big deal.
And isn't there also some issue with the conference process on the back end?
Yes, there is. As you guys know, a bill, the House passes a bill, sends it over to the Senate. If the Senate makes changes to that bill, they don't pass exactly the same bill that the House passed, that bill can ultimately go to a conference committee, right? And so that's to work out the differences between the House and Senate version. And once that's done, then the bill goes back to both chambers for a yes or no vote. There's no amendment on it after that. And those conference committees often end up making big changes to the bills. And no one's there when they meet. A lot of folks have questions about what's really happening. So one of the proposals by a lot of members is to open up those conference committees, right? If that's where the decisions are being made, let's have it opened up and let the public see what's going on. That would help a lot. We all say we're for transparency, for open government, and we are. Here's a chance to do some tangible things that will give that to us. And I don't know, it's hard to argue with letting the sun shine in the process. Thank you.
Okay, Paul, thank you.
Yeah. I'd really almost like to follow up on Ken's question. I know what our problems with Straus were 4 years ago, But 2 years ago, in the last legislative session, it was harder to see where he actually did anything to work to promote democratic ideas, to give them more committee appointments and things like that. I mean, is it a problem in his chairman selections that the calendars committee isn't getting things through? How would you have, if you were speaker in the last session, how would you have been different from Straus?
That's a very good, thanks for saying that, because you're right. Last session, more conservative legislation got done than was done in Speaker Straus's first term. No question about that. Of course, we had a lot more Republicans. You know, in Speaker Straus's first session, it was a 76-74 Republican majority, just a slight majority. In the next session, we had 100 Republicans that made a difference. And so we were able to do things on the floor and able to force things through that they couldn't be stopped behind the scenes. Again, these bills are getting filed, but they're not making it through the process. So without going into the details, here's a couple things I've proposed. One is, let's change the rules so that if a bill has broad support among the members of the House and it's stuck in a committee, I can take a petition around the floor of the House, get members to sign it. If I get enough signatures, we can bring that bill to the floor of the House for a vote. That's something we haven't had before. There's a mechanism to do that in the rules now, but it's very hard to do. Let's make it a little easier. Similarly, if a bill is stuck in the calendars committee, and if it's sitting there languishing there, if it's got broad support, let's bring it to the floor for a vote. Those would make a big difference, because again, these bills are being filed, but they're not making it through the process. And again, I'm not saying that as Speaker I would ram through the bills that I like. To be honest, I don't think that's the Speaker's job. And as conservatives, we don't need that, because we have a conservative House, and we have members who are for these things. If we'll let the process work. I'm also proposing that we change the committee appointment process a little bit, and I don't want to bore you with a lot of details, but under the current system, the Speaker appoints the majority of seats on every committee. If there's a 9-member committee, for example, the Speaker appoints 6 of those members completely at his discretion, but then 3 of those members, about a third, a small group of that committee, those are chosen based on the member's seniority. So you can ask for the committee you want, based on your seniority. If one of those spots is available, they've got to give it to you. So that means out of 360 some odd committee spots, about 100 get to be chosen by the members directly, by the folks that you sent to Austin, that you elected, right? I'm saying let's change it a little bit. Let's increase the number of spots chosen by the members, okay? Rather than having the Speaker choose 6 on a 9, let's let the Speaker choose 5 and the members choose 4. Let's open up more committees so that members have to say in the process. Now, it's important, I think, that the Speaker still appoint a majority of the committees, because you don't want the minority party, whoever that is, to be able to take over a committee, right? So I think the Speaker should still appoint a majority of those spots on the committee, but why not let the members have more control? I mean, they're the ones who were elected by the people to do the job. If you can see the theme here, what I'm proposing is decentralizing power, right? Taking power out of the Speaker's office and giving it to the members. And this isn't a indictment against Speaker Straus. In America, we don't like concentrated power, do we? Isn't that why our founders gave us 3 branches of government? Isn't that why we have 2 houses in the legislature? We like to divide power. We like to spread it out, because we know when too much power is concentrated in one place, bad things can happen. We don't want to trust anybody with that much power, not me or Speaker Straus or anybody else. So if we decentralize power, if we let's don't just talk about being honest, being open and transparent, let's do it. Let's put our feet to it. If we change the rules and decentralize power, with all these conservative members of the House, you're going to see these bills moving, and they're going to come to the floor. And if they come to the floor and we lose, hey, that's fine. It's a fair fight, and we can each take that up with our member of the legislature. But we won't have to worry about what's happening back in the shadows. Does that make sense? That's what I'm proposing to really open things up. And I think that process drives the substance. If we have a conservative House and the House is run right, we're going to see these conservative bills move, as it should be.
Follow up on this?
Just to clarify, so
Yes,
what
ma'am.
you're saying is to let more House reps with the seniority be automatically assigned into those committees, is that correct?
Under the current system, on the Public Education Committee, the Transportation Committee, on all those substantive committees, there's a limited number of spots that are chosen based on seniority. There's 3 on a 9-member committee. Basically, the Speaker has a 3-vote majority on each committee. And so what I'm proposing is keep that in place, but increase the number chosen by the members. So the speaker still has a majority, but not as big a majority. That's
So
what
you're
I'm
saying that the automatic seniority is less participating, or you're increasing the amount of
We
seniority?
would increase it. So without worrying with it,
Okay, well, I
because
want to
each,
address that. with you.
all those, so to tell you, each member gets to pick one, each member gets one seniority pick. So if you ask for committee X and there's a spot available on that committee, the speaker's supposed to give it to you. That's what the rules say. That's the way the rules are now. That applies to every member of the House.
Okay.
All right, so again, we're not talking about a majority of the committee, but a spot on any given committee.
But, okay, that's what I'm asking you. You're
Yes, ma'am.
talking about increasing the amount of members on the committee that have the seniority, in other words, the automatic get into the committee. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, not to the point that the speaker still has a majority, but not
Okay.
as big a majority.
Well, then, do you realize that basically the top 30,
Yes.
because I had somebody run these numbers, because I saw this on Facebook, and I thought, well, I'm going to look at that,
Right.
because we used to be a majority Democrats, and it hadn't just been but recently that we
That's
had the Republicans.
When I got there in 03, we were the first Republican majority since Reconstruction. That's right.
Okay, so if you make that automatic, the top 30, you're talking about 18 Democrats, 12 GOP. So you're talking
That's
about
right.
60% Democrat
That's
and
right.
40%
Right.
GOP. So you're increasing the Democrat.
Well, it's already that way. They're already based on seniority, but now we're just talking about 3 spots instead of 4 spots on each committee.
Oh, that's what I was asking.
Oh, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so you're not increasing it. You're
It's
decreasing.
still based on seniority. I was talking about putting 1 or 2 more slots on each committee. And now bear in mind, the speaker still appoints the majority of the committee. So if all the Democrats chose a certain committee, they still can't get a majority. The speaker still appoints the majority. So there's no risk of the minority party, Democrats, or if the Republicans are in the minority at some point in the future, there's no risk of the minority party taking over the committee. The speaker still appoints a majority, if that's what you're asking.
Well, I'm just asking about the automatic 3. Are you increasing that to automatic 4 based
Yes.
on seniority?
That's right. That's what I'm
That's
talking
what you
about.
are.
And every member gets to do that. That's right. So the speaker still has a majority, but not as big a majority in each committee. It's really about giving power to the members. And again, we're electing more and more conservatives. In fact, even though we have fewer Republicans going into this session, even the media is admitting that the House is more conservative than it was before. Now let me say one more thing, all right? Those members you're talking about, they're at the top of the food chain.
Right.
They're already getting their pick. They're already getting their pick with that 3. By increasing the number, we're allowing some seniority spots for the younger members, for the newer members. Those 18 or so you're talking about, they're at the top of the food chain, they're already going to be at the top of the list, all right? By adding, yes ma'am, by adding slots, we're allowing some of the younger members to actually have a seniority pick. Because those top members are already getting the pick they want. That's not changing. They're at the head of the line already. We're just increasing the number of slots so the younger members, so that every member can have the same process.
Why did you
Oh,
abstain from voting on Joe Straus?
No, thank you. That's a great question. The question was, why did I abstain? And you may recall, we were talking about Ken Paxton's run for Speaker. I was a strong supporter of Ken Paxton. I was doing his final seconding speech, in fact. And as you may know, we had a vote in the Republican caucus, and Speaker Straus won really big. We decided to go to the floor, but then overnight, a lot of folks who were dealing with Representative Paxton decided to go with Speaker Straus. And so that morning, Representative Paxton consulted with us and with a lot of folks and said, the best thing for me to do is to step aside, not be nominated. And I'm just going to go to the floor. I'm going to tell the folks who are here, you won. Because we had a speaker's race, you moved the agenda to the right. You made a difference. And so I'm not going to be nominated. And so Ken was not nominated. You may recall. I don't know, you may have been down there, but Ken was not nominated for Speaker. So there was only one nomination, and that was for Speaker Straus. He was the only candidate. It wasn't him versus anybody else. And so someone asked for a record vote. And so of the people who had supported Ken, some voted some voted no on Speaker Straus, some voted yes, some of us voted present not voting. And what I meant by that was, Speaker Straus, I can't vote for you. My constituents made it clear to me that they want to change. I can't vote for you, but you're the only candidate. So this is a respectful protest vote. A couple of us did that, some voted no. Many people who had supported other candidates at the caucus voted yes for Speaker Straus. That was the decision that was made to be a respectful protest vote. He was the only candidate, and it was a difficult situation for the people there, for the members. It turned out to be a really confusing day for a lot of people. But that was my intent. Those of us who did that were trying to cast a respectful protest vote. I can't vote for you. I wish I could. I'm going to give you a chance. I'm going to give you a chance. but I don't think I can support you. That's what that was about. Thank you for asking the question. Thank you for that.
Okay, Rick?
He's answered my question, but I'll defer to this young lady right over here.
All right, Angela?
I had a question about the legislation that didn't get passed in the 2011 legislative session, like the E-Verify, the sanctuary cities, and the TSA pat-down bill. I was very disappointed in that, and I liked what you said about giving the petitions about popular legislation.
Yes, ma'am.
I do appreciate that, and that answered my question about that. But are there any plans to have similar legislation like that being?
Yes.
Okay.
So the question for the TSA bill, for example, Representative David Simpson over in Longview, my neighbor, just pre-filed the TSA bill again. So remember, that was the anti-groping bill. The bill that says that when you go to the airport, they can't, without probable cause, grope your private parts. Representative Simpson has pre-filed that bill, so that bill's coming back.
Okay.
And other members may file similar bills. That's coming back. The time to pre-file legislation just started on November 12th. So if you want to go to the House website, house.state.tx.us, or just, you guys know, just Google Texas House of Representatives, you can see some of the bills that have been pre-filed. TSA bills have already been filed, and those other bills are going to be coming back again.
Okay, good.
We're very optimistic about that.
Okay, good.
The TSA bill is a bill that had 100 co-authors. It passed the House unanimously in the regular session, came back in a special session, and even though it had all that support, a decision was made that we can't bring this to the floor. It would make us a laughing stock. That's what was told in the newspaper. So
That's a very respectful way to put it.
yeah, so it's coming back.
Okay.
Good question.
I'm Ronnie Oldfield. Thank you for coming. Charter schools are now up 215 is the cap. May be wrong, but approximately. If you agree that the charter school cap should be raised, what would you see as the new cap limit?
All right. The question is about charter schools. Right now there's a cap on the number of charter schools. As you know, a charter school is a public school that is in the public school system, but they're not bound by the regulations and the mandates that a lot of public schools have to deal with. And so the question is, what would the cap be raised to? Here's what I would say. I think everyone is for more choices for parents, for students, for education, right? Now, what that looks like could be any number of things. We're talking about maybe doing a public school choice so that you can take your student to any public school, not just the district where you live. Some folks are talking about charter schools, about lifting the cap on charter schools. There's talk about vouchers, about tax credits. A lot of things are being discussed. One thing we all agree on is having more local control and getting rid of the mandates that our teachers are having to deal with and doing something about the testing. Right? We have to have accountability, but there's a sense that that's kind of taken things over. So to answer your question, I'm going to confess, I don't have a number in my head for what the cap ought to be. But there's going to be a big debate about that, about increasing that to make sure that that's an option people have. We want to make sure that charter schools are working. There are some really good charter schools. There are some that have had problems. But I don't know if you have a number in mind. I don't really know what it would be, but there's going to be a lot of talk about increasing that cap. Did you have a number in mind, or do you think?
No, I just know from recent experience, the State Board of Education wants an increase. And there is substantial demand.
Right, there is.
We now have a number of national sponsors bringing very high quality footprints to Texas. And so, again, to me, leave it be to the State Board of Education's discretion somewhat. Put a pretty high cap in there because they are doing a great job of vetting these schools.
Good. That's good to hear. Parents ought to have options. I think it's a good idea. That makes sense to me. Okay, Rick?
Unfortunately, we live in Texas in one sense that our northern state of Oklahoma allows their folks who's got concealed handguns to carry them on the sides without concealing them.
That's right.
And as a concealed handgun owner myself, I'd like to see what's your position on that following Oklahoma's lead on that.
Well, I wish you wouldn't put it in terms of following Oklahoma's lead.
We would never follow.
I apologize. The question's about open carry. I don't understand that other states have it to varying degrees. In Texas, we have a really good concealed handgun license, not open carry. I think open carry makes sense if we do it. We already have a framework for it because with concealed handgun license, I bet we have a number of CHL holders in here. And then that, of course, there's a background check. Of course, we have to qualify. We have to know the law, and these are law-abiding citizens. And so, I think it's I think it makes sense, and I think you're going to see bills filed to do that next session. And again, if there's support in the House for that, we need to have a debate about it. I would vote for that. I think it's a good idea. We got to make sure we do it right. But I'm for open carry. I think it makes sense.
Okay. Larry? Yeah, Larry, in fact, green and white. Yeah, go ahead, Larry.
Ann Richards set up the lottery with the idea of solving our educational finance system.
That's right.
Ever since that was set up, I have never seen it published, how much money that thing's taking in, how much it's going out, how much it costs to administer it. But one thing is clear, it is not helping our school finances. Why do we still have it?
Great question. The question's about the lottery. It hasn't done what it was supposed to do. Why do we have it? And you may recall, back in the 80s, it was pari-mutuel betting. If we do this, it's going to solve all of our public schools. That didn't happen. Then the lottery came along in the 90s, and that was supposed to solve the problem. Now there's talk about casino gambling, expanding gambling in other places. Here's what we've learned. And when I first got to the legislature, a very wise state senator told me this. You know, as a matter of economics, there's a certain amount of gambling income in the economy, right? Folks are going to spend a certain amount of money on it, which is fine. And here's what other states have found out. Maybe you've got the lottery bringing in this much money, and then you bring in casino gambling. Well, the lottery goes down, and that same money goes over to the casino gambling. You're chasing those same limited dollars with all the ugly stuff that comes with it. So gambling is a source of revenue that's proven not to be reliable. You asked about how much it is, what's it do for schools. When it was first passed, it was sold to help schools, and then as soon as it was passed, the government kind of forgot about that. They used it, they put it somewhere else. Well, there was such an uproar that the money was then dedicated to public education. It's not enough money. It pays for schools for a couple of weeks, but if you'll go to the comptroller's website, if you go to window.state.tx.us, window.state.tx.us, there's a breakdown showing you where the money's going, where it's coming from. But you're right, it's not a reliable source of revenue for education.
Then why we still have it?
During my first or second session of the legislature, the lottery came up for sunset review, and I voted against it. It hasn't been what they told us it was going to be. In fact, it's been a few years ago, but if I'm not mistaken, even Governor Richards described it as a sleazy way to raise money. I think that's what she called it. And I think she was right about that.
You go out somewhere where they sell lottery tickets and take a look at who's buying them, the people can at least afford it. It's hurting families.
You hear that a lot. I think you hear that a lot.
Doing more harm than good. I don't see why we still have it.
I know. I think if the voters knew what to do now, they probably wouldn't approve it.
Okay.
Fine, I'm glad I came and really appreciate your answers. My question was, I think a lot of stuff is going to fall into the category of fighting federal overreach.
Yes.
And just today I read about Mr. Larson, House Bill 149, Texas Liberty Preservation Act.
Yes.
And going back to private property and Kilo and not mentioning Obamacare. And I don't think Mr. Straus has done hardly anything to fight overreach, and I think that's going to be a big problem for Texans and everywhere.
That may be the biggest problem Texas faces is the feds trying to mess with us in every area of our lives. We enjoy a pretty strong economy now, but that's not going to be the case if they're allowed to reach in and control things and make us less competitive and take our jobs away. I think you're right. It's something Texas really is going to have to lead on.
So what you're feeling, I get a feeling, how do you feel? How do you think the House is feeling about
Yeah, the question is, how does the House feel about those things, about standing up to the feds, about pushing back? I want you to be encouraged. We talked about these new members that are coming in. This new class coming into the legislature is really fired up, and they're really going to shake things up. Even those of us who have been a little bit longer, we're hearing from folks back home. People are concerned. They're worried about what the feds are doing to us. I think you're going to see a lot more bills like that filed. And again, if we have these rules in place, and if the Speaker does his job and lets the process work and let the bills move through, you're going to see some of these bills get a good debate. And I think it's going to be good. I think people get that. We're also going to have a much more conservative Texas Senate than we've had in a long time, and that's going to make a difference too. It's a good question.
Okay, Steve?
Touching on education a little bit, I to compliment that question over there, illegal immigration is the biggest attack on the state, the county, and the city, both educationally and through social programs. How are we going to address that in the next 3 to 5 years?
I apologize, what was the first part? This is the biggest.
Education.
Yes.
Illegal. Providing their education and providing social programs for them at the expense of the state, county, and the city.
That's the first way to catch. We talked a moment ago about E-Verify, right? There needs to be some way for employers to verify, whether it's E-Verify or some other system. Bills get filed to do that, and they need to move through the process. Of course, the Sanctuary Cities bill, that was a difficult debate. It was a debate we had. That bill finally made it, but didn't make it all the way through the process, through the whole legislature. Those bills are being filed again. There was a bill filed about in-state tuition for illegal immigrants. These bills are all getting filed, and they're going to get debates because people are concerned about this. And again, as conservatives, this is a debate that we need to have. It's not that we're against immigration, but we're for obeying the law, right? And we're for the rule of law. We're a nation of immigrants, and that's how it's always been and it should be. And folks who are here legally feel the same way. So these are issues that are right and that the majority of Texans of all demographic groups are for. We just need to have the debate. I think these bills are already being pre-filed, and you're going to see some action. If the majority of the House is for it, and they are, these bills ought to come to the floor for a vote. And we know that the governor, lieutenant governor, are for these things. The Senate, again, a much more conservative Senate this time, is going to make a difference also, I think people get that.
Julie?
You alluded to the fact that there was a caucus meeting 2 years ago.
Yes, ma'am.
Regarding the speaker's
Yes, ma'am.
election. And I wonder if you could just describe how that process is established, who decides that, and how can it be used to our advantage? And is that a good thing? Or, I mean, it used to be also that out of those caucus meetings before 2 years ago, that whoever the legislators voted on, then they came out to the floor of the House and they voted as a block, 100% for that speaker that they voted in caucus. Obviously, that didn't happen 2 years ago, but how can that work in our favor?
Okay, so the question's about the Republican caucus. Last session, the Republican caucus met, all the Republican members, or most of us met, to talk about who we're going to get behind for speaker. And actually, this is where Washington does it differently than Texas. In Washington, the majority party, be it the Republicans or the Democrats, the majority party meets in caucus, and they choose the speaker. And whoever they select, they come out and they all vote for that person, and that's the speaker. In Texas, that's never been done before. Actually, it's kind of funny. Last session, a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, that was the first time that the Republican caucus has ever met to discuss the speaker race. Believe it or not, it was a new thing. And so the rules of the Republican caucus don't really tell you how to do it. There's not really a mechanism for it. And so it's really uncharted water. All we know for sure is that the Constitution says the members will elect the speaker when they assemble. So we know the speaker will be chosen on the first day. But as far as the caucus goes, there's a lot of unanswered questions. Last time, some members were in favor of the caucus, some members were against it, but there's no mechanism to bind members to stick with whatever the caucus does. So there's really a lot of unanswered questions about it. And I think members are going to have to decide that how we want to do it. To go to the caucus, to go right to the floor, to do both. I wish I had a better answer for it, but there's really no precedent for it. Last session was the first time the caucus in Texas, the Republican caucus, had ever meant to do that. So really,
was that as a result of the resolutions that were passed by the different organizations in the different counties? I know Dallas County and Harris County passed resolutions to ask the legislators to have a caucus.
Right. And the questions about the resolutions passed by the various counties, those were passed this time and went to the state convention. And so the caucus, the Republican Party platform, now calls for a caucus. And it actually says the Republicans, members of the House, should meet in caucus and choose their speaker candidate by secret ballot. And then they should all go from there and support that candidate. So that's in the Republican platform. It's never been there before. And again, people have a lot of questions about how that's going to work. It's still an open question. It really is. It's a new thing. Never done before until the last session.
Okay, Beth, then Lady Payne.
Okay. There is pressure on the legislature to remove TRS from out of the control of the Texas legislature. What is your feeling about that? Are you for keeping it or for moving it to Social Security?
Oh my goodness. TRS, Teacher Retirement System. There's a lot of debate about pension reform, especially up north. There's a number of states where their public pensions are upside down. They're in terrible shape. They've been raided. The money's not there. They have it's a bad situation. Even in Texas, some of our municipal pension systems are having problems. Teacher retirement system is sound in Texas. The money's there. It's not just full of IOUs. The actual money's there. And it needs to be protected. Yeah, putting TRS. Did you ask about putting in Social Security? Moving in or Social Security?
Well, that's one of the rumors is that they might want to move it to, they just want it out of the state, is what I understand.
I see. No, ma'am, I don't think that's going to happen. I sure won't go for that.
Good.
The TRS needs to be protected. I mean, the teachers have paid into that, and they rely on it, so it needs to be protected.
And hasn't had a raise in 12 years.
That's right. 2001 was the last time there was a raise. There's only been one 13th check, in fact. Now, in the House, we voted for 2 or 3 more 13th checks. Didn't make it all the way through, and we got to do something about it. I know, it's been a long time. 01, right? You're right. But it's got to be protected.
Hi, my name is Jerry Bentley. I'm visiting here from the Clear Lake Tea Party. On a federal overreach, my question is, we have a vehicle to push back the federal government called nullification. Why do we not use that vehicle more?
The question is about nullification. And let me give you a practical example. In my view, what that is, I've studied that some. I don't know if any of us have read Tom Wood's book on nullification. Very interesting. Gives a historical background for it, where it came from. Fascinating book. And it's something that I've studied a little bit in the law. Earlier, we were talking about the Patient Protection Affordable Care Act. We were talking about expanded Medicaid and setting up health insurance exchanges, right? And we discussed how Texas should say no. Well, that's what we're talking about. I don't know what we're going to call that, but when the state says to the federal government, no, we're not going to do that, I think that's what we're doing. And I think the Affordable Care Act gives us the best opportunity to demonstrate how that works, right? I think it's a good idea. And I think if we say no to Medicaid expansion, and we say no to health insurance exchanges, I think that's what we're doing. Now, I may be missing something, but it's really about the state saying to the feds, we disagree with that, you're wrong. We're not going to do that. I think that's what we can do with the Affordable Care Act. I think we have a great opportunity.
I think more of our legislators are not aware of nullification.
It may be.
Especially with the new group coming in.
Well, it may be, and there's a lot of questions. Some people are not sure what it means or what the history of it is. And there may be examples where it was used or it was misused and maybe given it some bad connotations. But for my part, if we look at something like the Affordable Care Act and it says we want you to expand Medicaid, which is a bad system, it's not helping people. We want you to set up health insurance exchanges. If we say no, I think that's federalism. I think whatever we call it, I think that works. Does that make sense to you? We have an opportunity there to do it, I think. Ernestine? Ernestine? Yeah.
I didn't hear enough about you. In the last session,
Yes, ma'am.
how many bills did you sponsor and how many got passed?
All right. I'm embarrassed I don't bring my notes with me, but if you look at the bills that we were for, the bills to pass, the pro-life bills, the bills to limit government, the bills to limit the growth of government, I either filed or co-authored those bills. And I'm embarrassed. If you go to the House website, house.state.tx.us, and click on my name, it'll show you a list of all the bills that I filed and all the bills that made it through. And I'm sorry, I have the exact number. Go ahead.
What were some of the bills? What were some of the bills that you filed or co-sponsored?
Thank you. For example, I was a co-author of a bill that said if we do health insurance exchanges in Texas, abortion coverage should not be included. So that's one of the number of us filed. Again, it's one of the bills we're talking about that didn't make it through the process for some reason. All right, that's one of those bills we're talking about. I also signed on to a bill. Actually, I filed a bill that said if we want to raise taxes in Texas, we should require a 2/3 vote of the legislature to do that, making it harder to raise taxes. Is that okay with everybody here?
Yes.
And let me say, I'm not the only one who filed that. A number of members filed bills like that. I also signed on the bill in the past and filed a bill that said, let's limit the growth of government to population growth plus inflation. This last budget cycle, we were short on money. We had a budget shortfall, so cutting was about the only option. But when the economy improves and money starts flowing again, there's a problem. I mean, there's good things we can do with that money, but there's a temptation to take that money and start new programs and do pork barrel projects and things like that. When the money's flowing like a river, that becomes a real problem. So that's why we need a limitation that says, let's don't let the government grow faster than population growth plus inflation. So bills, if you look online, you'll see my name on bills like that. And those are the bills we were talking about before. They're being filed and supported by a lot of members, but they're not making it through the process, and they need to. The support is there, but they're getting bottled up somewhere. And I hope that is.
Ken will have a follow-up.
If you become speaker, how would you pick the chairs of the different committees?
Okay, thank you. The question's about committee chairmanships. We talked about that this morning. You know, we have a pretty talented group of folks. Present company accepted. They're pretty smart folks, a lot of experience on what they're doing. And so you guys have sent some very sharp ones down there. And so for those committee chairmen, you look at people's experience, look at their expertise, and you put the people where they can be of the best use. The committee chairmanships and committee assignments should not be a way to reward my friends, to punish my enemies. That's not what that ought to be used for. You ought to put the most qualified people in those spots. And that's what they're there for. There's the public education committee, there's the transportation committee, there's homeland security and law enforcement. Put people there that have experience and have the right philosophy over those areas. That's how that ought to be done, I think, no matter who speaker is.
Ernestine, one part, an answer to the question as far as bills that he's passed. There's a flyer on the back table for everybody, and on the back it has his conservative record as far as bills that have been put in, some of them in 2011, but on through this whole
Someone just
time.
gave it to me, I did not.
Okay, all right. Anyway, that's there for everybody to grab on the way out. Ken?
Yeah, I think a lot of the folks here probably know the story of redistricting, but you played a central role in early on in terms of what happened. And to the extent that people here may not know the story, would you mind telling everyone what happened there?
The questions about the redistricting process, and this has been in the news a little bit lately, because there was a perception, among members of the legislature last session, when the redistricting process was going on, when the maps came out, that conservatives got punished. You can look at conservative Republicans whose districts got dramatically changed, or where conservative Republicans got paired, like two incumbents get put together in the same district. You see a lot of that happening. And there's some questions about why that happened. And just here a couple of weeks ago, some emails were released. And I don't know if anybody here has seen these. There's a website called Red State. You know, may have been to redstate.com. There's a blog. Red State issued a report where they had obtained some emails that were released from inside the Speaker's office, and they really showed. Well, you ought to read it for yourself. But I mean, they really show disdain for conservative members of the House, for members of the State Republican Executive Committee, for activists, for Tea Party folks, for back home, call things like idiots and stupid. And there's even some pretty ugly language, some pretty profane language in there. And those emails were released, and it really shocked a lot of people. I can tell you, I've talked to a number of members of the legislature who are concerned about that and would like some answers and would like to know, are there more emails like that? There were maybe a half a dozen emails. I have to go back and look on the website, but these actual emails were produced. You can look at it. It concerned a lot of people, and it demonstrated that maybe the redistricting process wasn't open and fair. Maybe it was used to punish conservatives, and it just made conservatives feel like it kind of confirmed the feeling that coming out of the current leadership of the House, there's a disdain, there's a contempt for conservatives and for grassroots people and for folks who really want to get involved. So that was troubling. And again, the emails speak for themselves, and it's really pretty troubling. A lot of folks have been concerned about that. They want to know if there are more emails, and if there are, let's release them. And also, what's the response? Is there an explanation for this? We haven't heard it yet.
Okay, I've got about 4 hands here. We'll take those 4. Harlan, back here, and then Ms. Johnson, and you're back here. So we'll start here. We'll just work around this direction and circle. That probably is going to about take up our time. So
this is a follow-up to what Ken asked, but also to the caucus meeting. Is it possible to make the rules where the Republicans meet in caucus, the Democrats meet in caucus, they put up their choice, Republicans put up our choice, so that we don't have 11 Democrats helping to have a cabal decide who the speaker is. So they must, so even if they do want Straus, they can put Straus up as their choice, and we can put you up as our choice.
Okay, so
And then the other one is, if you don't want to, if you can answer it later, because I don't think everybody's time, what are your thoughts on zero-based budgeting?
Thank you. So the question is about the caucus process that we talked about before. Is there a way for the Democratic caucus to meet and choose their candidate, Republican caucus to meet and choose their candidate, then for us to come together with those two candidates as the choices on the floor? We could do that. Of course, it would have to do with the caucus rules, because each caucus would have to change the rules. So the Democratic caucus would have to put that in their rules, and the Republican caucus would have to change our rules. Because right now, again, it was a good question, because under the Republican caucus rules, there's no mechanism for doing it. So a lot of folks would probably like to get to something like that. I don't know how we do it without, we have to amend the caucus rules to do it. And the question about zero-based budgeting, we did that back in 2003. We came in with a big budget shortfall, and rather than looking at what an agency spent last session and building on that, we told each agency, why don't you go back and start from scratch and show us what you need and tell us why you need it. And doing that, we were able to close about a $15 billion shortfall. Yeah, zero-based budgeting is a good idea. We're thankful for our agencies. They do good work. And in Texas, we have great state employees. We have a lean state government. It's not like the federal government. I mean, there's still work we can do, but we're much leaner and much more efficient. But zero-based budgeting makes a whole lot of sense. It's really hard to argue with that, don't you think? It makes a lot of sense.
Okay, right here.
Okay. Randy Clemens, I'm with Ellis County Tea Party. Appreciate you being here. I think some of us are looking for maybe some more bold action when it comes to nullification.
Yes.
You're talking about, okay, we're going to, in effect, nullify it by getting rid of the exchange and Medicaid.
Medicaid, right.
But what is wrong with championing a bill to go through the House to absolutely nullify the entire Obamacare so that we don't have to put up with it at all in the state of Texas?
Okay. So the question is, what about just saying we nullify Obamacare? I guess my question is, it makes sense to me, what would it look like? Because the direct access that Obamacare, the direct effect Obamacare has on us is expanded Medicaid, health insurance exchanges, and then the employer mandate, right? That's the big one, right? The employer mandate. Well, if we can knock out the employer mandate by not setting up health insurance exchanges, if we can say no to expanded Medicaid, I think we've done it. Now, but I'm glad you said that, because help me take these concepts and apply them to specific bills, right? We're concerned about income tax and what the feds do with our money, for example. But there's really nothing that the state can do, because each one of us pays our income tax or doesn't pay our income tax individually, right? And so the feds send the money to you, so Texas can't really do anything about that. So in a lot of these areas, there's no way we can get involved. I think Obamacare, whatever you want to call it, I think it's a good opportunity. And so it seems to me, if we say no to Medicaid and we say no to the health insurance exchanges, we've pretty well done it. I mean, let's talk afterwards and educate me. But I mean, I think this is a good opportunity for us to do that. I really do. It's time to be bold. You're right about that, Lord. Harlan?
You said something about population plus inflation.
Yes, sir.
What population?
Okay. Good question. Population growth. Yeah, that's a good question. You know, population growth, that's based on people driving on the road, it's based on public schools, it's based on folks going to the hospital. So it would be population, you know, based on what the census estimates tell us, which is counting everybody who's here. I don't know how close we can get, but that's the idea. Because if you think about it, like our public schools, for example, when more kids come in, I mean, it costs more money to educate those kids. So we're talking about population growth. That's the idea. The folks who are using those government services. And when I say population growth plus inflation, we're talking about a limit on how much it can grow. You know, it doesn't have to grow that much every time, but that would just be the upper limit. So we're not saying it's an automatic increase of population growth plus inflation every 2 years. We're just saying that could be the upper limit of how far it could go. Without a really extraordinary situation with the legislature would have to have big vote change.
Where in the Constitution do you find authorization for the federal government to control health care and education?
The question is, where in the Constitution do you find authorization for the federal government to control health care and education? You know, it's funny, I've been through it a couple of times, 18 enumerated powers, and you guys said it's not in there. You just don't see it, right?
Education shall be reserved to the states.
Well, and the state constitution says The state, shall establish a system of free public schools for general diffusion of knowledge. And so it's the state's responsibility, not the federal government's. Yeah, it's not in here. You're right. You're exactly right.
Okay, a couple more questions? Yes.
I just have a quick question for you. When we had the last legislature, we had a lot of freshman representatives down there. That was good, it was bad. There was a lot of inexperience in how to maneuver, strategy-wise, and whatever. I'm just curious as to what we can do to improve that situation to where we're more effective as the conservative bloc to actually get things done,
Right.
to train maybe the freshmen coming in.
Yes.
Do you have any ideas on that?
Great question. The question is about we had last session a lot of new freshmen, big class of freshmen, and they were, of course, inexperienced, as members tend to be, and maybe we can train them better, get them up to speed quicker. Of course, yours were outstanding, as you've seen from around here. But yes, it's a good idea because this next session, we're going to have another big crop of freshmen. So almost half the house is going to be in their first or second term. Here's what's encouraging. These new freshmen, they're not waiting for us. They're taking it on themselves. Something I've never heard of happening before. But a large number of these new freshman Republicans have already met together 2 or 3 times. They've had someone come in and lecture them on the rules of the House. They're practicing about how to get things on the floor. They're going to hit the ground running, which is going to be good. I think,
Intimidation is a concern to me
It is.
down there, because when I was down there at the time that the vote was for the speaker last time, you walk the halls, there's an arrogance in the halls down there, and it's greatly intimidating to me.
it is. It's a question that it is intimidating. The question is about intimidation. The fact that there's so many in this freshman class, and the fact that they're sticking together, I think is going to help. And they've got some friends. And I'll tell you this too. These freshmen that are coming in, that are wanting to shake things up and take a stand, they're really encouraging some of the senior members, encouraging me to take a stand. It's been good. It's a good question.
Okay, final question, Ray.
Yeah, Bryan, I just want to play off of a question that was asked earlier about how we get involved. Number one, this guy right here in front of us today is from the grassroots. He is one of our grassroots candidates. And he works for the grassroots. Now, the establishment candidates work for the lobbies. Basically, plain and simple. That's how it works. Now, how you can get involved. Number one, he said pray a while ago. We all need to do that. But everyone in this room knows Kenneth Sheets or Cindy Burkett. That's how you get involved. You've got to have a face-to-face. You've got to have a telephone call. You've got to have an email. You've got to have some correspondence between you, the grassroots, and that person, because they work for you. Now, another point that we can make is that right before the speaker race, we're going to have a hotel lobby staging area in Austin, Texas, and every one of you are invited. Every person here is invited to come to that staging area before that speaker is elected, and let's go and put pressure on those people. That's exactly what we're doing. We will let Scott know where it is, what time it is, and who's going to be there. I can tell you right now that we're going to have some Fox News contributors there. And I'm not going to tell you who, but they're going to be there. They've already been invited, and some of them are coming. So we're going to have some spark in this deal.
Thomas?
Just one comment. Freshmen get their office 72 hours before session starts. The year that I was there in 07, we got it that day. Okay? These guys have got 3 days in their office, so that's 3 days for you to knock on their door in Austin, Texas.
I'll say this, I'm so glad to be here with my friend, Richard Thomas Latham. We work together down there. We still work together. And I appreciate him being in his neighborhood. And my goodness, Bill Mesquite's here, who serves the grassroots Republican Party and elected. I could just go up and down the rows. We were talking about the redistricting process. Doug Maines is here. Doug is an expert in redistricting, worked on it for years, helped conservatives in that process. As I look around the room, I can just thank so many people for all you do. It has nothing to do with me. Thanks for what you do. This is an important process, and it's important for us all to be informed about it and to have a debate about these things, about how the speaker's chosen, about the role of the speaker. These are things David Fincher, how you doing? These are things we should be talking about. So thank you guys for this. And let me say this. You may come with other questions. I may say, well, is Bryan the best guy to do it? oh, Brian's a lawyer, we don't need a lawyer in there. Well, yeah, you know what, I practice law, I'm a lawyer. They said, you may have looked over the summer, a lot of folks said Ted Cruz, well, he's not a conservative, he's a lawyer. He filed this law. Remember that? Remember that stuff on the internet? He filed some lawsuit and this. Well, I don't think it really confused people because they looked at the issues, looked at what the candidates do. So if there's questions about whether I'm the best guy to do it, let me know. Let me hear from you. I'm putting myself out there based on my conservative record and based on the fact that we can change things in the House. We can open up the process, make it transparent, make it really transparent. If we do this, these bills ought to move through. If they don't, then come back to me, come back to all the reps and find out what happened. But the bills ought to be moving in an open process. It shouldn't be back behind the scenes. So that's why we're running, really. And let me just say this on a personal level. Again, thank you so much for coming in. Thanks for inviting me and Speaker Straus both, actually. Thanks for inviting us. And let me say this. I love my country, and I'm not giving up. I don't think God's done with America. And, I think our best days can still be ahead of us. We're so thankful for the Constitution and for what is in there. There's some great stuff in there. We know what's not in there. We're thankful for that, too. It's pretty limited in what the government's supposed to be doing, but we have a role. And we have a role to play. You guys believe in that. And let me just say this on a very personal level. If I was a freedom-loving, patriotic American today, the way things are going, and I didn't know the Lord, man, I would be scared to death. You know what I'm talking about? I really would be. So I'm glad to know that this isn't all there is. Now, we're here. We want to be salt and light. We want to stand up for what's right. We want to fight for our country. That's why you're all here. That's why I'm here. And so that's what I want to leave you with. Because I tell you, thank you for being here.
To those of you in the Mesquite, Sunnyvale area, Garland, now that Cindy can take some of that area, we'll be following up with a meeting with our representatives to express our desires. So as you leave tonight, check on the back table. If you've not signed up as an endorser for Representative Hughes, if you'd like to do so, please do so tonight. It's something which we can do, and grab any other information that's back there. Any donations that would help out as well, they'll be taking those. Thank you for tonight. Thank you.